to A Well-Designed Business. My name is LuAnn Nigara, and I'm so glad you found this podcast. Together with my husband Vince and our partner Bill, we have grown our company WindowWorks from the ground up. So I know and I understand the challenges you face in running your interior design business. I also know that your talent alone isn't enough to ensure your success. So on this podcast, we talk about strategies and practical steps to help you grow your business. But make no mistake about it, we have our share of fun here too, mixed in with those aha moments that I love so much. This isn't fluff. Nobody has time for that. Whether you are a new interior designer or a seasoned designer, I am here to help you create and to manage the kind of interior design firm that you dream of. It's straight talk and it's action. Are you ready? Let's get started. Hi, welcome to A Well-Designed Business. Today is another episode of Black Lives Matter, and my guest today is Rasheeda Gray. Rasheeda is the owner and principal designer of Gray Space Interiors located in the Philadelphia area. Launching her firm in 2016, Rasheeda has already completed over 75 residential and commercial projects. Her path to interior design began at the tail end of a 15-year career in marketing and communications with one of our nation's top insurance companies. Rasheeda holds a Bachelors of Science in Marketing and International Business, as well as an MBA with a concentration in marketing. She also earned her professional certificate in interior design from Temple University. She has been featured in HGTV, Good Day Philadelphia, Elle Decor, Architectural Digest Pro, Designers Today, and more. Along with her husband, Jake, Rasheeda is also the co-founder of Gray Real Estate Group, a real estate development company. Rasheeda originally impressed all of us very much with the first time she was on the podcast. This was episode number 267, and I encourage you to listen to this episode as well to learn more about Rasheeda. I want to thank Cravit for sponsoring the podcast. In business more than 100 years, Cravit is again leading the industry in innovation with their popular visualization tool. It is now available on Lee Joffa Workroom Furniture. You can build your own unique furniture piece and see it rendered before your eyes right on the screen. Lee Joffa's Workroom program was already geared towards designers looking for custom furniture. And now, being able to see the final product before purchasing it, well, this is an outstanding advantage. Get started at designing your custom furniture today. Go to cravit.com/Lee Joffa. That's cravit.com/LeeJofa. Okay, let me share my interview with Rasheeda. Hi, Rasheeda. Thank you so much for coming back on to A Well-Designed Business with me today.
Hi, LuAnn. Thanks for having me.
So, Rasheeda, we have lots to catch up on.
Yes.
First of all, you have not been on the show since episode 267, and at that point, had you just turned into full time at that point? Were you still part time in your design firm?
Still part-time.
Wow.
I was about a year into the business, part-time, stayed part-time for another 2 years after that, and just a year ago, so 3 years into the business, just a year ago, I went full-time.
Yeah. Now I'm remembering it all. And I just think, first of all, you rocked my world that very first time I met you at Cravit in Philadelphia all those years ago. And we've stayed friends. And,
Yes.
I'm so glad, I have to say, that we, in our own way, well, and of course, ended up being a lot more people got to see it, but you came up to me last October in High Point, so October 2019, and you said, I have a really good idea for a panel. And I was like, oh, what is it? And you said, I think there's a place to talk about mentorships and that relationship and all of that stuff. And I was like, oh, we're doing that next High Point. We're doing that. And so we didn't get to do it at High Point, but we did do it on the MyDoma 19 hours because I got you and Cheryl Luckett and, of course, the other ladies that joined us, Jenny and Brittany, and we had Kat and
Alfie.
And Alfie, right?
Yep.
And so, what I love is that you are a great out-of-the-box thinker, that you are a person who takes action. You are a person who plans and intends for your success. And so these have been, I think, some of the big reasons why your interior design firm has been successful. But today we're going to talk about those things, but we're also going to talk about what's happening with our world right now, Black Lives Matter, because I know, and what I've learned, the tip of the iceberg, of course, is only what I've learned, but it feels like so much in the last 2 or 3 weeks that I've learned, is that the realities and the conditions that face you personally, Rasheeda, as growing your interior design firm as a Black woman are very different than the realities that other designers that are not Black face. And it's hard enough to grow a business without this added layer of, challenge, difficulty, oppression in plain language, right?
Yes. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. First, LuAnn, again, thanks for having me on. It's good to talk to you. And, I want to start by saying this conversation is necessary, but it's certainly uncomfortable for sure for both you and I. So I applaud you for taking the initiative to kind of continue the conversation. So I read a post on social media, actually a couple times. It was a meme and then a caption, and it said, 2020, we all thought 2020 would be amazing. It would be like the year of change and clarity, 2020 vision. And the one post said, be careful what you ask for, because it has definitely become a year of vision. And so we are currently truly seeing who America is. There's layers. Everyone is complicated, but we're uncovering some complicated layers in our country right now. And we're seeing things that have been buried for way too long, and they're starting to surface. And so I think it's no coincidence that we are seeing racism surface, along with being forced to be home and still because of COVID. And so we're literally living in the midst of two pandemics,
Wow.
COVID and racism.
What an
And it's
amazing
not
observation, by the way. Really,
Yeah,
really good
yeah,
observation.
yeah. It's not pretty, but it's necessary. And perhaps the uncomfort that we're all feeling and what we're seeing is going to force and bring about change. So like you said, I'm grown in an interior design firm, and things have been great, but it hasn't been without challenge. And yeah, as a woman and as a Black woman, I faced both microaggressions and disparities that have happened even without my knowledge, just simply because of my race.
Yeah, that is the part that is just so difficult to accept any longer, quite frankly.
Yeah.
Right? It is. I mean, and you know what happened. Thank you for saying this is so hard to do, because it is. It is so hard for you to do, for me to do, for every person. Because as soon as I say certain things, I just think, oh my goodness, did that just come out of your mouth? Like, what? It is. I said the other day, it's like being on an ice skating, like on a frozen lake, and I don't have skates. And that's where I'm at with it. But it is the only way to get change happening and to sustain the change, is to keep really, and I love this 2020 vision. That's a very powerful thing. I had not come across or seen that meme. So that's a very powerful, almost like you could see looking back 20, 30 years from now in the history books, that relationship being brought out, the 2020, the clarity of what are you in this? How will you be accountable? How will you change individually and personally? How will you stand up and speak for and with your friends, right?
Right. What side of history will you be on?
Yes. Yes. It's funny. My daughter, Christy, has been very touched by this. And that was one of the things that she said. She said to me, I don't want my kids one day to ask me, what did I think and what did I do? And I stand there with my mouth open and nothing coming out. Right.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's another layer, not only am I a Black person, a Black woman, but I am a mother. And particularly, I have two children, but my daughter and my son, but especially to a Black boy. And so that's another layer that I'm kind of dealing with in the midst of all of this.
It's the truth. It really is. Kay Whitaker and I had a conversation about her 13-year-old son and the
Yep.
things that he goes through and the things that he's not even aware that he's going to go through, and the ways that her and Tim have to, prepare a young boy for the harsh realities without jading him and coloring him and having him lose his sense of joy and peace, right?
Yeah. Yeah. My son is his birthday's next week, and he will be 15, which blows my mind 'cause he's still my baby.
You don't look old enough to have a 15-year-old.
Yeah, I am for sure. He will be 15, and he's going into his sophomore year in high school. And, we've been talking about something as simple, which should be very exciting, as driving.
Yes.
And, 16 will be here before we know it. And quite honestly, my husband and I have even said to each other, do we want to let him drive at 16? Is he truly mature enough to do what is required or necessary to be safe if he were to ever be pulled over? My son, I kind of admire him because he is not afraid to speak up for himself. He's very confident in who he is. And that at times can be seen as threatening to people, to the wrong person. And he's not that looks matter, but he's still looks like a baby to me. He's about my height, and he's kind of scrawny, but he speaks up for himself. And so will that be taken the wrong way if he were to ever be pulled over and mom and dad can't be there to help him out of a situation? I mean, he's gotten into arguments with children, with his peers, as kids do, and he's been called the N-word by his peers, not once, multiple times, in middle school and this past year in high school. So, and we live in a pretty diverse area, and so, I worry about what that looks like for him when I can't be there every second of the day to protect him. So, yeah.
What is a conversation with him like after that? Because you were talking about whether it's his close friends or his circle of friends. That's not, hey, you're a jerk. That's such a cutting to the stomach punch type word.
Intentional.
Yes, that's a great way to put it. It's intentionally said to hurt. It's funny because it reminds me of the word, I don't know if I can say this on air, but the see you later word, like whatever that word, what's that acronym for that? Like when you're, as women, right? If a man or your girlfriend or somebody were to use that word with you, you're just like, those are fighting words. Like that word is not a word that you just pull out for no reason.
Yeah.
Right?
I was taken away when he told me that someone called him that in the classroom, mind you, LuAnn.
And was there repercussions with the teacher and the school?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, we pushed for it to be, of course, the children were arguing, so there were there were repercussions for that. But another layer is you're using hatred. Those words are, so we did push for additional punishment. And the conversation is, here is the origin of that nasty word. Here's why, it should not be used. We're sorry that you had to hear that. Now you have to build him back up.
Right.
And he says, he's a boy, so he says, oh, I'm okay. But deep down inside, it hurt. And so, and don't ever allow anyone around you, even jokingly, to say that word.
Right.
It's just not tolerated. So it was a sad conversation, but just to show you that even our children, even in the classroom, those things are being said. And so racism is prevalent and it's here in America, and it's staring us in the face right now.
And as you're talking, I'm thinking about it, and I feel like I should take a moment to clarify because, and first of all, I remembered it. See you next Tuesday. But here's the thing that I want to clarify, and this is the heart of what your experience is that I'm learning, okay? Is that even if somebody uses that word on you or me, and we feel like I said, like, that's just a layer extra, like, what are you doing over there? It actually is descriptive of a behavior or an aspect. It's not descriptive of my literal presence. Right? Like, in other words, I could be called a see you next Tuesday, black, white, yellow, green, purple. But, you're not going to mistake the other horrible word. And that word is specifically attributed for something that you cannot change. I can change my behavior, but you cannot change the color of your skin.
Or you can't change what that word was created for.
Right.
Yeah.
But you see what I'm saying? It's like that is just so a level of that's so much deeper than the see you next Tuesday word is my point on that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like I can start to imagine what that is like. And then I was listening and talking while you were talking. I'm like, well, actually you can't though, because that's not the same.
Right.
I could get mad though.
Yes.
No, so and that is at the heart of all of these conversations is the actual definitively non-negotiable, non-deniable differences that you face as a black woman, a black mother, a black wife, as a black designer, as a black daughter.
Yep.
It's just non-deniable that the differences are out there.
Yeah.
So tell me about this then, because tell me about growing your business, and maybe tell me, you mentioned to me the genesis of your business was actually rooted in a reaction to the absolute systemic racism in our country. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. I think I was always meant to be in the position I am now, but there were some things that have happened in my journey that kind of pushed me further in that direction. So, LuAnn, as you know, I come to design with a background in corporate America, and specifically the insurance and financial services industry. I spent 15 years in marketing and communications, and it was a great career. Loved lots of things about it, but there were some aspects that I didn't love, and some of those were rooted in racism. And so I mentioned off air that I've been called a liar. And this was a 25-year-old girl fresh out of college being called a liar by a 60-year-old white man because my tire blew on the way to a meeting. So I just don't know if that same treatment would have happened to someone who was not Black. And then also just not always being at the table. And so my last position in corporate was assistant vice president. So I was a part of the executive team. And, we would stand around the water cooler on Monday morning. Hey, how was your weekend? Oh, great. My kids and I did this. And then the next person would say, oh, yeah, we were in Canada on a hunting trip. And then the next person, how was your weekend? Oh, great. I was in Canada on a hunting trip. And I was like, wait, you went to Canada too? And
it's pretty random.
Yeah. And then the third person went to Canada too, until there were 5 people who went to Canada on a hunting trip. And not that hunting is my favorite thing to do, but I would have liked to have been invited to things like that, or maybe not something so extreme, but maybe just golf, a round of golf or something like that. So
it was more that you weren't invited, that you weren't even given the option to say thanks. That hunting is creepy. I don't want to do it. Right?
Yeah, exactly. That's the truth. And so even golf and a lot of great business conversations happen on a golf course, but if you're not even given the opportunity to be invited. So things like that happen throughout my 15 years in corporate. And it was certainly the good old boys club. I was always one of either the only woman, the only Black person, or the youngest. And so that made me uncomfortable and begets change. And so that probably contributed to me wanting to dig deeper into what's missing, what's my purpose. Oh, interior design has always been there. Let me dig a little deeper and start my own business. So yeah,
Mm.
it was a contributing factor. And I think for many, especially of my generation, knock on wood, I'll tell my age a little bit, but I'm at the tail end of the millennials, like the very beginning. I'm at the very
Okay.
beginning of the millennials. And a lot of millennial African American women have decided to go into business for themselves. And I am sure that it is has a lot to do with feeling some of the same feelings that I felt, that you weren't included, that you didn't have a seat at the table, that you were limited by this, not only a glass ceiling for women, but a glass ceiling that's even lower for Black women in
Mm.
corporate. So I knew, I mean, I will talk to any of my friends, Black or white, in corporate that I could trust, that I probably would not go past the VP level. Senior vice president, there weren't any other Black or African American people at that level. And so,
Mm. And for someone
CEOs
who's
and
so talented and smart and bright like you are, that's just absurd to think that. And how could you even
think,
contemplate your future and say, this is not going to be open for me? That's just no wonder
yeah.
you would figure out another way, right?
Yeah, it pushed me to think outside the box again. But I mean, and it's not just feelings and what I thought versus what was happening. I mean, statistics show that um, there's only 4% of America's CEOs are African American.
Mm.
None of those are women, African American women, I should say. And, our population represents 13% of the population. So we're not even proportionately represented in the C-suite in corporate. And so, yeah, it definitely contributed to it.
Yes, yes. Well, it's look, we're the better for it. Okay, the design industry is the better for it, but it doesn't negate that if your heart was there and your talent was there, that it was not okay that the opportunity wasn't there.
Yeah.
Like it would
Yep.
have been if you were white, is the point, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
So, okay, so now we come to the design industry, which
Yes.
you are going to be with me and the rest of us here with this podcast and try and make real change in the design industry, because that's where even in 2 weeks I've come to some clarity of my own. I've come to the clarity of, yeah, I'm going to make some mistakes. Yes, I'm going to step on some toes and I'm going to have to pull the back and say, my goodness, I'm so sorry. And people
Right.
are going to have to come to me and say, sweetie, like you're out of line here. You know what I mean? But am feeling so like it's the right thing to do is to have the conversation out loud so that if nothing else, we make the change in our little world, because the
Yep.
design industry is the tiniest subset of
Yes.
our whole ecosystem of money and finance and sociology and everything else. But it's, to me, I keep picturing when you throw the rock in the middle of the lake and all the circles go around, and I'm saying to myself, you know what, if the only thing we can do is make a change here together, then maybe some of that change will create change beyond our industry.
Oh, I'm sure. Absolutely.
Right?
I agree.
So that's what we're going to do together, all of us. And
Yep.
my question for you is, what do you see? What do we know? We like Corey Damon, like we have to have more Black interior designers in the shelter magazines. We want to,
Yes.
for me, I know for me, it's continue to put you on panels and in speaking engagements. But what else do you like? Where else you see it? You were telling me a little bit about just the actual working of being a designer in relation to home ownership. What do you want to tell us about that, Rasheeda?
Yeah. I I love the idea of home in its entirety. So that expands from interior design to home ownership at its core. So now, LuAnn, my new side hustle, now that I'm full time as a designer,
Because what would you do,
my
Rasheeda, if you did not have a
right.
side hustle?
My new side hustle is a real estate investor in partnership with my husband. We own a real estate investing company. And so homeownership is at the core of what I do. I think back to what my parents and my grandparents and my great grandparents faced. my great grandparents were the first ones to be born free. And my great grandparents migrated from North Carolina and Virginia to Philadelphia, and then had my grandparents or my grandmother. And that was in the time of Jim Crow laws. That was also in the time of redlining. And I don't know if anyone's gone into details of that on the podcast, but it's essentially, and it's still being practiced to some extent today, where capital and funding was kind of driven to certain areas or not driven to other areas, because mostly because of the makeup of the folks that live there. So if an area was highly African American, which happened pretty often, and I'll talk about that in a second, then funding for mortgages and banks, they didn't want to, it was considered a higher risk. And so they would not provide the mortgages in order for African Americans and others to obtain mortgages and funding to buy homes. And so one of the reasons why areas became so, well, segregation.
Mm-hmm.
The first mass produced suburb was in Levittown, New York, and Levittown said blacks are not allowed. So that's America and homeownership and redlining. And so the wealth that is needed, and what we know is wealth is extremely tied to homeownership. And so black homeownership sits at 44% today, and white homeownership sits at 75%.
Mm.
And blacks are 2.6 times more likely to be denied for a mortgage as whites today. And so that widens the wealth gap. If, as an interior designer, 90% of my clients are homeowners. And so, as opposed to being a renter. And so a homeowner, if 90% are homeowners and we have fewer homeowners in the black community, then that lowers my pool of potential clients just by way of nature. And then homeownership leads to wealth. And if the wealth gap is as wide today as it was in 1968, LuAnn, the wealth gap between African Americans and whites is as wide as it was in 1968. You have to have 11 African American households to get the same net worth as one white household.
Whoa.
And so if that wealth gap exists and you need some extra coins and dollars in order to afford a luxury service like interior design, if that wealth gap exists and on top of it, homeownership percentage is less, then that pool for eligible clients for interior design as an African American designer, because typically clients go towards folks that they feel comfortable with and that they look like. That makes the pool smaller for us as designers. So, systemic racism not only pulls into our daily lives, but it also pulls over into our lives as interior designers, Black interior designers.
Let me ask you a question, and you may or may not know the answer to it, okay? Because you worked in the insurance industry, but is it? Look, we've all seen the television shows, the movies where the black gentleman and his wife go to the bank, and you can see from behind the scenes the movie is letting you know that they are denying them the loan for the mortgage, and 5 seconds later the white family walks in with the same or even less credentials and they're approved. Okay, so the thing about that is, Rasheeda, this could be the stupidest question on the planet, but are we saying that in 2020 that is still a subjective decision on the bank's part, that it is not the combination of the credit now, and I get that that's another problem, that the credit rating and all those other things because of the systemic racism to begin with, but you get to a situation where the black gentleman and his wife have the same, say, net wealth, credentials, credit score as the white family. Am I asking a dumb question? Is that really still individually up to the possible racist making a decision on that?
We still have on applications, what's your race or ethnicity? And so I think it would be naive of us, and it was not a dumb question, I think it would be naive of us to think that there aren't some inherent biases that happen amongst the humans who may or may not know that they're displaying racist behavior, where they may see check for black and may inherently, unconsciously or consciously, say no.
And so to that exact point, do you check the black mark off on an application when you and your husband are doing something?
I do.
You too.
Yeah.
See, my brain goes, then don't check it. Like on my brain, like I would be like your son. Like I'm just going to get in your face.
Oh, well, I know, right? But the other thing is, you also turn in a copy of your driver's license.
So it doesn't matter, right? Exactly.
There's no
avoiding it. Doesn't matter.
Escaping it. Yeah.
So and I apologize for the ignorance on that, because to me it just seems like in this day, now I get it, 10 years ago or 30, where I know that it happened. It's not even like, oh, did it? I get that it happened, but I would just think at this point, I'm going to say another crazy thing. Aren't we as white people at least pretending that we don't do that? Like, come on, Banks. I mean, come on. Like, now, really?
The numbers don't speak to that. It's still 2.5 times more likely to be denied.
I mean, it's one thing to be a racist in the closet. It's one thing to be a racist at the water cooler. It's another thing in a legal thing like that. That just seems like that should be a no-brainer, that it should not be possible in 2020.
I know. I agree. Totally agree.
So what do? We have to go to the local level of our local elected officials and because who runs the banks? It's all the people who were the politicians. I mean, it's an old boys network of the worst ever. I am so apathetic about politics, and this has woken me up. I have to tell you that. I was literally a person. You guys all know I thought I was going to be president of the United States when I was little. I truly did. I had no idea that I had no skills, no means, and no money to get me there. But when I was 13, I thought, anything is possible. It's America. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I found out, no, you have to be well connected to 19,000 Thurston Howell for thirds for your entire life in order to get it, right? But the thing is, I still truly believed in it. And it's in the last 5 or 8 years that, for all reasons of my own that have nothing to do with this, this is now compounding. Like, I was just like, I gave up. I was just like, you know what? It's an old boys network. And even the women that reach it to that level just become one of the old boys.
Yes.
And the heck with you, the heck with all of you. But it has been the other thing of these last 2 weeks for me. I'm like, LuAnn, you can't just pretend that idiots are running our country anymore. You just can't. You just can't. You have to go wake up again and get back involved and pay attention and vote and change things. Because last election was the first election my entire life that I didn't vote in, because I was just like, no. This or that, no. I'm done. No. It's like, no. So, all right. Okay. So that's what we have to do, right?
That's right. And I share that. Can you imagine the frustrations that folks in my community may have? And they're just like, it doesn't matter. It's still the same things. I'm not voting. And so I echo what you just kind of came back to, that we have to vote.
Me too.
More importantly, at the local level, more importantly, at those elections that happen every 2 years in between the presidential election, because as we saw with our prior president, that it's hard to get things done if you don't have the backing of the Senate and other entities of the government. So it's super important to vote both locally and nationally.
Well, and that's the thing. It's because it's your local mayor who becomes your local congressman, who becomes your local senator. And if you don't fight it at this level, then all the same nuts all keep going in and running our country.
That's
and it's okay, this is not a political show, but oh my goodness.
Another topic.
But it's true. And but that is part of the exploration too of the last several weeks, is what can we do? So, and then bringing it back to our industry, right? So in our industry, we have got to make sure. See, I know it sounds silly to understand that I did not know this 3 weeks ago, but when I said that, hearing the stories of designers like yourself, you explained to me that you spent sleepless nights wondering if you should use your name, Rasheeda, as your business name, Rasheeda. You know what I mean? Like,
yes.
Like, my mind was blown.
Yeah, I mean, when you're building a business, you have to think about getting a website and filing under the correct entity of LLC versus sole proprietor and getting clients and all those things. And on top of that, a lot of my energy was around what do I name my business?
Hmm.
And Rashida is an African American, a name that's popular in African American culture. It's not now. There aren't that many babies named Rashida, but back in the 80s
Yeah.
plus, it was. And it's also a Muslim name, and my grandfather named me Rashida. And so it means it's held in very high regard in the Muslim culture. It means wise, mature. And so I love my name, but um, it's not a common name. And it is, people can be judgmental when they hear Rashida, and think, unfortunately, negative things are stereotype. And so I shied away from calling my business Rasheeda Gray Interiors because of that.
Hmm.
I do love the name Gray Space
I do too.
Interiors.
I do too.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
So I won't change it. I love it, and I'm glad for it. But I shouldn't have to worry about that. I am
Well,
who
that's
I
the
am.
thing. And I'm not saying, I don't actually think Rasheeda Gray Interiors would be a better name. I love Gray Space Interiors. The difference is that you even had to consider it. See,
Right.
you had to say, you had to force yourself to think if there was another name that was as good or better. And the fact
Yep.
is whether you and I are in agreement that Gray Space is a better name,
Right.
that's not the only reason that you landed on it. And that's the
Oh,
part
yeah.
that's not right.
And
And
even not
right.
even to mention, sorry, LuAnn, not even to mention the whole, like, do you put your picture up? Do you not
Yes.
put your picture up? And I'm just like, to heck with it. Like, I am who I am, and there's no hiding it. If you don't see me on my website, which you do, but if you didn't, you would have saw me at the consultation, and so it is what it is.
Yes. Well, and it's funny because my friend Shanae, if she listens to the show, she'll remember. Matter of fact, we just spoke over the weekend, and she and I recalled this story to each other. The first time, how I met her virtually was, she said she remember she was watching Scandal, and I said, I know I was watching TV at the same time too, so I was probably watching Scandal as well, and something happened where she DM'd me on Instagram. Now, we didn't know each other. I never heard of her before that. And she DM'd me on Instagram. And whatever the question on Instagram was, but I tell you guys all the time, as soon as you reach out to me, no matter what it is, the first thing I do, if it's on Instagram, I go to your Instagram page because
Yep.
I want to answer you by name. So
That's
if
right.
it says,
That's insane.
Gray Space Interior Design, I want to go find your name. And so...
Right.
Right. And so that's a pet peeve of mine. If I get to your
I
Instagram
know.
homepage and that page doesn't tell me your first name, and I don't care if it's Rasheeda or Susie, that gets my goat because I think your
Right.
name should be there. Right. But so now I go to her page, her Instagram page, and her name is not there. And so now but this is me. I'm not just going to come back. So now I click through to her website, and I am looking all over her website, and I can't find her name. I can't find her picture. I can't even find what state she's doing business in. But see, this is my aha of the last several weeks. 3 years ago when that happened, a matter of fact, it was 4 years ago when it happened. It was within 3 months of me having the podcast. My blind spot there was that I just thought that there was a business lesson and a business thing that I needed to make sure she knew as a young designer. Hey, you got to put your name, blah, blah, blah. And so what happened was I come back, I answer her question, and I said, and by the way, I said, I was at your website. I said, I don't see your name. I didn't even know if I'm talking to a man or woman is the point at this point, right? So I said, I don't see your name. I don't see your picture. I don't see what state you're from. All the, the Fred Burns onlys are missing. Who is the only interior designer, right? And so she comes back to me and she said, yes, I've been debating whether to do that or not. Now, I don't know that she's debating it because she's a black designer. I'm just like, I think she's debating it because she's a baby designer and doesn't know the difference. This is my aha, like of now. And so I go back and I say to her, I said, no. right. You got to have your face there. You got to have your name there. What state are you in? How am I supposed to, if I find you on Instagram, how am I supposed to connect with you is what I'm saying. So then she ends up texting me a picture of herself, and she is drop dead gorgeous.
Oh, I'm sure.
Stunner, head turner. And what she always says to me, she goes, LuAnn, there's not many women like me walking around with a 2-foot high afro, right? Like she is just a stunner. And so I said to her, I said, are you kidding me, lady? I said, I'm going to put your picture on my website. I'm like, that, you're gorgeous, right? So we have our moment. And then I ended up doing a live event in New York. Very shortly after that, she came to meet me. And we've always stayed in touch. But what was funny was this past weekend, we had a conversation, and she said, you know, I didn't go into it on an Instagram DM, but all of that was tied up into that. And I said, my goodness, I'm so blind, you know.
It's a shame that we have to even go through that and think through that. I mean, on Corey's episode, I heard him kind of speak to this as well, that his work was shown in a magazine, I believe the story was. And then when he got to the potential client's home and came in for the consultation, everything just totally changed. And she, I think she ended the consultation early. She did not hire him because she did not know he was Black until she saw him in person.
Right.
And so it's a shame that we have to do that. And, you know, on Instagram, underneath Gray Space, there is Rasheeda Gray, and it's on my About Us page, and my pictures there and all that. But that took a little bit of I had to tell myself that's the right thing to do. And
what would you say, Rasheeda, to the other young Black designers that are listening, now that you have made the decision, as difficult as it was, and I hear it, and I experienced that with Shanae, is would you say, yes, do it? Like, I encourage you to do it. And for you, tell me, I'm your friend, LuAnn, you're meeting designers all the time. Keep giving them the encouragement to do it, or am I mistaken here?
No, I would. I would definitely listen. Our business is a lot about trust. And I think that trust means I want to connect with a human. And so, yes, please put your name and your picture. Of course, our work should be first and foremost.
Right.
But your name and your picture goes a long way, because people, especially now with digital access, they want to get to know who you are before they invite you in your home, in their home. So, yes, I would encourage it.
I agree. I'm glad that you said that, because I was hopeful that I wasn't incorrect in that, because as much as I can never understand how difficult the decision is to do it, my every bone in my body is like, put it out there and let the idiots that don't get it, don't even call you. Don't even risk the hurt. Don't even risk them being less than human, in like the way poor Corey had to, and I'm sure many of you experienced, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, just weed them out. Let the idiots weed themselves out.
That's right.
That's what I feel like.
If it's not for you, it won't be for you, regardless of how it happens.
Right. However, there is legitimate, well, you know what? The thing is, I was going to say there's legitimate financial consequences, but that person that isn't going to be open-minded and continue the hiring process based on your body of talent is ultimately not going to hire you anyway. So why waste your time with it, right?
That's right. Yep.
Yeah. And I remember you said one of the stories why I reached out to you as well is because you said you had a story about when you were pulled over by a police officer and you were terrified.
Yeah. I was on my way to the hairdresser, and I was running late. And I made a U-turn in New Jersey, and I live in Pennsylvania, and New Jersey's traffic patterns are a little different than PA, and you cannot make a U-turn in New Jersey. So I did it, and as soon as I did it, I was like, oh, crap, what did I just do? And 2 seconds later, I saw a cop in my rear view, and I pulled over. And I just got so shaken up. And I think this is around the time that Sandra Bland was killed in the police custody. And so, you know, it was just a raw emotion that happened in that moment. The cop pulled me over. He took a good 5 minutes before he came up to my car. So I'm sitting in my car and I'm shaking and I'm worrying. I'm working myself up, and I was crying. And now, this was like 5 years ago. I'm an adult. Why am I crying before a police officer from a U-turn? But it was because the unknown.
Right. It's like you said, the raw emotion combined with the unknown, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
She didn't use her turn signal and she was pulled over. I did a U-turn. What differs? What makes me different than Sandra Bland, than, George Floyd, anyone else who
Yes.
may or may not be in police custody?
Right.
So yeah, it was, and the cop said to me, "Why are you crying?" And I said, "I don't know. I'm sorry for making a U-turn. I know it wasn't correct." And he did give me a warning, and that was the end of it. But I almost feel like, well, did I get lucky that time? I don't know.
Right, right, right. That's the thing. You see, it's the outcome there isn't nearly as significant as the process of what happened to you, is the
Yeah.
reality of what happened to you, and that the possibility of what you were terrified about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's not something, me being white, that I would have that moment. I would
Right.
be like, "Okay, dude, get out of your car and give me my ticket so I can keep going. Let's go,
Right.
chop chop, let's go."
Right.
Right?
Yeah, I didn't care about the ticket. It was just the unknown.
Right, right, right. Oh my goodness, yeah. When you said that in your social, I just was really picturing you so
Yeah.
afraid and so scared, and that's so crazy. And so, again, another one of the eye-opening experiences, that I've been going through. So what do you want to do, Rasheeda? What do you want to say to the industry? Tell us about your business and the things that are going on. You've been building a massive business. I mean, it's just, the first time I met you, you were part-time, side hustling it. And at the September when I met you, you said at that point, year to date, you had 20 projects under your belt. And I just looked at you and I was like, lady, you got to get on my show.
Yeah.
So what have you been doing and how have you been growing it? And what have you learned that you'd want to share with your colleagues here?
Well, it's been an amazing journey for the last 4 years. We are probably, I got to do the exact math, but at the end of 2019, we were at 75 projects. So
Oh,
we maybe 5 or 6 more projects. So about 81 projects total. So still going at a great pace. I am totally full time now, a year after being full time, and it's the best decision I've made. I have 2 team members on board with me, which is so exciting. And we all operate in our superpowers. I'm so glad that I brought team members on board because it's been helpful in growing the business. And so, lots of great things have happened, great features over the last few years. I've invested in professional development with business coaching. I don't know if I mentioned this to you. I've worked with Kim Cutable of
oh,
My Design.
that's awesome.
Did a year-long program with Kim, and I was at LuAnn Live, and just really continuing to develop my business both professionally and myself personally. I was like on the brink of renting an office or leasing an office space this year and decided I wanted to continue to operate lean, and then COVID hit, so I'm so glad that I didn't. So I've built an office space in my home where my team and I work out of, post COVID. But yeah, it's been great. I have an ongoing relationship locally with our local television network, Good Day Philadelphia, where I'm an expert on the show. And so it's been an amazing year, to say the least, and it's growing and just been very exciting.
But you know what? It's. I'm not shocked. I'm not surprised one bit because you really, really do. I mean, from reaching out to Cheryl Luckett and asking her if she would mentor you to every
Yes.
other business decision that you've made, you just are so thoughtful in it. And I'm going to ask you about this relationship with the local television station because as soon as you said that, a gabillion designers just went, "What? How'd she do that?"
Right.
And I remember Nicole McGuire was on the show last spring, and she also has a relationship with her local television station. And she shared 2 or 3 different ideas on how to build that relationship. But I'm curious, how did you go about doing it, Rasheeda?
Be very persistent.
Okay.
LuAnn, if I have an idea or a thought that I think, of course I've thought it through, but I'll try to formulate a plan, and then I'm not afraid to ask or move on it.
Mhm.
And so I did that with the local with local Fox station here, and I kind of visualize myself in that space, and not shy that I do love television. It's something that I want to expand in my career. And so I asked and didn't get responses. I think I was not emailing the right person.
Mm.
And then, as the universe and God would have it, someone who has a talk show locally sent me on my personal Instagram a message, and he wanted me to mentor his friend who was looking to become an interior designer. I don't know how that
Oh,
happened, but
whoa.
and I bet you me talking about mentoring and
Yes.
both being a mentee and mentoring others kind of opened that door for him. I was like, first, how do you even find my personal Instagram? I know I don't even use it as often. So, nonetheless, he said, listen, if you need anything, let me know. And that was
Well,
all I needed to hear.
just sit still. I'll get my list. I'll be right
Yeah.
back.
So my ask wasn't, can you put me in front of the right people? My ask to him was, what can I do to become more attractive, not physically, but
Right.
more attractive for television? Like, what do I need to do to prepare myself if an
Right.
opportunity were to come
You know
up?
what I always say? What do I have to do to get lucky, right? So what do
Yes,
I have to do in the background so when somebody says, "Oh, hello, Rasheeda," I'm ready, right?
yes, right. What does Oprah say? Opportunity plus preparation equals success.
That's it.
So he gave me these tips. He said, you really want to make sure that the content, first of all, you have to feed the producer's content.
Mm.
Oh, three things. First, the producer is your contact, not the personality, not the news anchor. The producers are the ones who make the decisions.
Okay.
So, and I'm sorry, the anchors do as well, but your first gatekeeper is the producer.
Okay.
So reach out to the producers. The second thing is your content must be such that it is, especially for a news show. Good Day Philadelphia is on, I believe, 6 a.m. to 9 a.m., and that's when folks are getting ready for work. And so it has to be both visually appealing and audio appealing audio
Mm.
as well, so that if someone's getting ready for work, they can listen and they're not watching, or if someone's watching and they're not listening with the volume off, they can be interested as well. Um,
Ah.
yeah, I thought that was pretty interesting too.
That is that because I would say to you that that probably takes a great deal of thought to
Yeah,
really present a segment that if you turn the sound off, do I like looking at it? And if you're in there brushing your teeth and you're just listening, does it make sense?
right.
That's not
Yep.
easy to do.
No, it took a lot. And then the last thing I said earlier is that you have to feed the content to the person you're pitching it to. It's almost like pitching for print publications and digital publications. You create the content, and then, of course, they'll tweak it and they'll add to it to make it fit for the audience. But you are responsible for coming up with some ideas to present to the producers.
And we know that. We've had Amy Fleury with Recipe for Press for her book
Yes.
and for the designer edition teaching us that from the very beginning of the show, right? It's like
Yep.
come with what you can do. And I have to say I've learned it with the podcast too. There's
Hmm.
nothing that is going to sit in my inbox longer than something says, "I love your show. Can I be on it?" Okay.
Yes.
Because I want to say, thank you so much, but you've just made it so hard for me in
Yes.
the chaos of the busyness of the day. And when you think about it the way Amy explained it to us, pitch what the hook is, what the angle is, and make it easy. So now what happens is in my inbox, there's all these pitches. My assistant, Lisa, I don't even read my own emails anymore. So Lisa puts them all in a folder, and then she puts it in my calendar once every 10 days, 2 weeks, review pitches. And then
Mm.
I just go, yes, no, yes, yes, no, no, yes, no. That's it.
Yep.
That's it.
Yep.
Because, and the thing is, it's a sin because there's some that I'm like, what it is, it takes time. If you're somebody that I kind of know, but you didn't give me the idea or the hook or the angle. And then I'm like, okay, I really like this person here. She's really fabulous. Go make them
Yeah.
think and make them come back, but tell them yes,
Right.
but come with the idea. Right.
Right. Right. Yes, that's right.
So I
And
love
they
that.
did not know me from a can of paint. So it took a great deal of time to come up with just the right kind of content to make it worth their while. So show.
And did you come up with a series of ideas where you could say, hey, we could do this month one and this month two? Or did you just pitch an idea, got your foot in, everybody kind of liked each other, and then they said, if you want to pitch again? How did you do that?
I pitched like maybe 5 ideas. And you know what I used as a resource? I would just Google other news shows that were similar, segments from those shows. And I'm just like, will that work in the Philadelphia market? Okay, well, let's give it a twist that makes it work here, and pitch it that way. So yeah, some of the ideas came from other segments around the world. There's a show in Canada called City Line, and they have designers on often, and they have great segment ideas. So that's my little insider tip.
Well, I love it. Well, and there's your marketing background right there, because the rest of us think we have to invent the wheel. And you're like, well, it's marketing, and what else is working?
Right. That's right.
I love it. But then I'm sure you crafted something to the Philadelphia message. Like we can talk about cheesesteaks in the middle of the design of the sofa or something.
Something like that.
Oh my goodness. Philly's my neck of the woods.
I know. Yes.
As a matter of fact, I get called out on my accent a lot. And when people really know the difference, they recognize that it's actually a South Jersey Philly accent as opposed to a North Jersey New York accent.
That's right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep. I can hear it.
Yes. I'll shout out to my friend Kathy. She is in the industry. She went to high school together. She just last month, Rasheeda, she says to me, I love you. I said, yes. And she said, but you really sound like South Jersey Philly every time you say 2 words. And I'm like, what 2 words? And so I still can't say the one word right. I didn't even know I was saying it wrong.
I probably sound like you.
Well, so one word is street, except I can't do it. Street. And the other is strategy. Like I can't even do it. So I'm like, I said to her, what am I doing wrong? She goes, well, you're saying it almost like SCHT, like strategy, like an S. And honestly, I'm like, how can I drop
in strategy?
Yeah. How can I drop the word strategy from this podcast? But in the last month, I am on eggshells every time I say it.
That's hilarious. I thought you were going to say water.
Oh, that's the other one. Water.
Yeah. What is it? What's the right way to say it? Water?
I don't know. I think other people say water. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's water.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. Oh, sweetie, I have to say, I appreciate your coming on the show, and we kind of took a lighter approach to it than recent shows, but that is, I guess, look, everybody shows up in the space that they're in, right? Yeah. And I'm grateful that you were willing to come on and just put your voice in here and your conversation in here and share your experiences with it, because I really do believe that it is the layer by layer uncovering of these explicit experiences that each of you have had that are going to contribute to the rest of us truly paying attention and being more mindful about not only how do we show up in the world, but of kind of like calling out and being guardian in our industry of no more with that, right?
Yeah. And thanks again for having me. And I was kind of intentional about taking both a serious tone, because it is serious. Mm-hmm. It's absolutely necessary to have this conversation now. And then also a tone of, okay, let's be human and have conversation around other things that may be going on, only because, we're all human, and we just have to, I think it's more relatable to kind of, I think it's relatable to do a combination of both in some way. Mm-hmm. And then if I could, LuAnn, we talked about ask, and like what the next steps might be. And so I just kind of have a few thoughts around that I would love to share with everyone.
Please. Absolutely.
Okay. Very first thing that I think can be very simple for all of us to do, but takes courage and takes intentionality, is to speak up. I shared this on my Insta story the other day. I was honored to participate in an initiative led by Albie called Share the Mic Now, the home edition. And Share the Mic Now is something that was started by Bozoma St. John, who is an African American woman, CMO, Chief Marketing Officer for some large brands like Uber, Pepsi, etc. She and a few other ladies combined to do this in social media with some other, I guess I would say, non-Black white women who have major platforms. Katie Couric was a part of it. Kourtney Kardashian was a part of it. And so it's a day where we, as Black women, are able to take over or speak or stand on the platform of our sisters, white women. And so that went well in that aspect. And so Albie was able to bring that to the design industry or the home industry. And I had an opportunity to be partners with Carmel of our Fifth House. And my ask to the audience was to speak up. And so it's small, but it's a huge impact. Oftentimes when we're amongst family and friends, there's conversations that happen around the Thanksgiving table or dinner table where there may be something said that could feel racist, but not intentionally so. And so I would encourage all of us that if those conversations come up, to speak with love and to speak up and say, I don't agree with that. I don't tolerate that. That is wrong. And here's why. And, I say speak with love. That's, a conversation in the corner or a conversation that's wrapped with love in front of it. And then also in a more public setting, in the corporate boardroom, if an African American colleague is being overlooked or is speaking but not being heard, it would be amazing if someone could speak up and say, Rasheeda has a really good point, and I would love to hear what she has to say. So things like that. Of course, there's opportunities to donate to organizations like the Black Interior Designers Network, Bad Guild, those 503c organizations that could help the African American population in the design industry, and then also beyond that, NAACP, and organizations like that. And then two more asks. Proportionate representation, and I believe Corey spoke to this as well, that our magazines, shelter, print, and digital, we would ask that they represent the population. And so the African American population is 14%. And so I think the pages should at least reflect that, and include designers of color, both not just designers, but also the staff that works at the publications. I know a few editors on social media, and I don't know one African American editor on social media. And so if we can just have proportionate representation, that would be amazing. And then the last thing is to not let this be a moment. Let it be, let's continue to have the conversation. Let the momentum continue. Let it not just be a hashtag or an initiative, and let it be, it does feel different this time. And I think we spoke about that a little bit, LuAnn, offline. It feels a little different. And I'm hopeful that it's not just a moment, that real change is on the horizon. So continue the conversation, even if it's uncomfortable.
That's awesome, Rasheeda. I love it. I mean, you just put out such identifiable things. That's the thing. We want to and need to identify the exact things that each of us can take ownership of and responsibility for and take action for and with, because otherwise it will just slip away. And for me, I'm with you. I don't want it to be a moment. I don't want it to be a bump on the road. I want it to be something that we look back and say, when this happened, we did something. And I know there were a dozen times throughout my life that I could have personally come to this moment before, but it does feel different. And I feel it with you, and I'm with you in trying to help it be much more meaningful than a hashtag. So, and
Yes.
it's people like yourself, Rasheeda, that are willing to one more time have the conversation of teaching us,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I get it. It's a real thing. I've had so many conversations over the last 2 or 3 weeks, online, offline, and I understand what a huge effort it is when you are saying to yourself rightfully, really? I got to explain it to you again? But I'm grateful for you for doing it, because it's just every single, it's just like business. How many times on the show have we talked about how you make your website, or how you attract your ideal client, or how you do your client expectation? You need to hear the same thing over and over in different ways with different voices in order to actually have the breakthrough moment. And that is the whole point of this. It's not to do anything more than to bring the conversation to the design industry, voice after voice, sentence after sentence, one way or another way, so that each person that listens along the way gets their aha moment when it comes. Right?
Yes.
So
that's right.
That's what we're going to do. So, well, thank you, sweetie. Thank you so much. And I don't know if I'm going to get to see you in High Point if we're all going to go, but
I know. I hope so.
That's it, So we'll work it out, and if we get to go, we'll be there, and I'll see you, and we'll probably have wine till 3:00 in the morning.
Yes, for sure. It's necessary. And thanks again for having me, LuAnn.
You're welcome. A week or two ago, I mentioned to you that I had watched Oprah's Where Do We Go From Here, and that I took pages of notes. One of the things that one of the speakers in that program said really points directly to one of the points that Rasheeda shared today. The speaker said, if you are white, you innately believe the police are here for your protection. But if you are black, you have been raised to know that this is not the same for you. You do not enjoy this privilege. And he continued, this is an intrinsic wrong in our society, and this is a fundamental injustice that so many black people have lived with. This is evidenced by both Rasheeda's personal experience when she was pulled over by the police, as well as she and her husband Jake worry about how to prepare their children, and now in particular their son, as he is nearing driving age right now. So if you are white, sit with this for a moment. Really consider any time that you've been pulled over. Have you ever truly been this afraid? Shaking in the car afraid? Now, sometimes I've known white women to express anxiety and being pulled over, but that is typically in situations at night when the woman is alone in the car. And let's be serious. The fear in that moment is not the fear of the cop. You see, if you are white, in that moment, you're actually afraid that you're getting pulled over by someone other than a cop. Okay? Big difference there, right? That's the fear. It's like, oh, I'm on a road by myself. Is that really a cop? Is it not a cop? What if I pull over and it's not a cop? Do you understand the difference? Rasheeda was afraid because she knew it was a cop. And it was broad daylight. Okay? So This is a fundamental difference, right? And it is exactly how, as white people, we have a built-in expectation that the cop is there for our safety. For us, it's a simple traffic stop, especially when it's a broad daylight stop. Our worry is, am I going to get a ticket? Not, am I going to be safe? This is racism. This is the very white privilege that we have been blind to. So I just want you to think on that. All right, all these little eye-opening conversations along the way. Please take them to heart. All right, now let's review some of Rasheeda's asks, okay? Please consider where and how you will show up to support her and our Black colleagues and friends. Number one, Rasheeda said, follow, support, and share the Share the Mic initiative, both the original movement founded by Bozoma St. John and her colleagues, and ingeniously brought to our industry by Albie Boisbang. Albie is on Instagram at Albie Knows, so follow her for information and updates. And my thanks to Albie for also including me in this Share the Mic, mic, and I had the opportunity and the privilege of sharing my mic with Yvette Rios. To learn more about Albie, definitely follow her on Instagram, Albie Knows. And also, you can go back to episode number 348 when Albie was on the podcast. All right. The second thing is vote, show up. All right. Make sure the people in government enact laws, make new laws, and things that result in real changes. Okay. We talked about this. It has to happen at the city, the local level. And, I told you how I felt about that, and it is a new day, okay? How about representation within our industry, shelter magazines, live events, show houses, product licensing, product development, everything. Look around and speak up to the ones in charge when you do not see our Black colleagues at the table, okay? The fourth thing is that Rasheeda asked, donate to organizations who make it possible for change to happen and to feature our colleagues who are having their talent out there every day and struggling to get it in front of the eyeballs, okay? In the industry, Rasheeda mentioned Black Artist Design Guild and the Black Interior Design Organization. And outside the industry, Rasheeda said consider the NAACP. And finally, Rasheeda, like so many of us, is asking, do not let this only be a moment, a hashtag. Keep talking, keep learning, stay accountable, teach your friends, teach your children so that change becomes a reality. Okay? My great thanks to Rasheeda for sharing her time with us today. She did this for you and for me so that we can learn, benefit, and grow. Don't let her time be in vain. Okay? Commit to doing something, to doing your part. Thanks so much for showing up today. Decide to be excellent. Thank you so much for joining me again today. This podcast is a production of WindowWorks, your resource for custom window treatments and awnings. To learn how we can help you on your next interior design project, go to www.windowworks-nj.com. And if you're interested in working with me on your business, either through masterminds or one-on-one coaching, or you want to know how to get my book, The Making of a Well-Designed Business, or you just want to know what's going on in the podcast land and where I'm going to be, all of that is found at LuAnnNigara.com. Thank you so much. Have an excellent day.